friends. I'm Abhinav Pandya, founder and CEO Usanas Foundation, and your host for today's show. So we are back with Usanas Dialogues, and today we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Shishir Priyadarshi. Mr. Shishir Priyadarshi is the president of Chintan Research Foundation. He served as the former director of WTO with over 40 years of working closely with global institutions. Mr. Shishir also served in the IAS, holding senior roles at both the state and central government. His experience includes work in various ministries related to economic, finance and industry sectors, as well as supporting inter-ministerial coordination at the Cabinet Secretariat. And today, as the head of the Chintan Research Foundation, he is shaping the discourse and the new space of think tanks in India. So we are very lucky and honored to have him with us today. So a very warm welcome to you.
Abhinav, thank you so much, and genuinely I'm delighted to be in this new office that Usanas has opened, and it has all my good wishes and blessings, and I'm delighted to be here today.
Thank you very much, sir. We always wanted to invite Mr. Shishir Priyadarshi, given his vast experience with international organizations, but it's say that things are predestined, and today it's finally happening. So we can begin with the interview.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. So we are going through very interesting times. So we can see that it's a period of geopolitical and geo-economic transformation, turmoil, and almost let's say unleashing of the new world order. So we have President Donald Trump in the US, and he has imposed very unreasonable tariffs on India. And I must say, not just on India, but this tariff coercion is ravaging across the world. So because of this tariff imposition, India is reconsidering its geopolitical and geo-economic alignments. So how do you look at that? I mean, is India moving towards the other powers like China, Russia? So how do you look at that?
Abhinav, thank you, but let me answer that question perhaps taking you back in history for a few decades. It was to prevent exactly what is happening today that the major trading nations of the world had set up initially the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, and later in 1995 a much stronger WTO. And the whole idea at that point of time was that there must be predictability and certainty in global trade. And the only way you can ensure predictability and certainty would be by binding countries' tariffs. So countries' tariffs within the WTO rules and regulations were bound, and those tariffs were applied on a most favored nation treatment. And then we've had 30 years of very predictable and stable global trade. However, Mr. Trump has, in his own wisdom or as advised by his advisors, decided to throw the WTO rule book out of the window. Though he does say that this is because of national security reasons, but it's extremely difficult to justify the national security reason on things like furniture, on things like movies.
Yes.
You could possibly understand it to some degree for steel and aluminium, but that also to a certain degree of the exports. Now the biggest challenge here is that this is driven by the individual thought without any reference to the existing global and multilateral rules. Now obviously this creates a huge problem, not just for countries like India, but as you very rightly said, to many other countries. So India is struggling. India is, I must say, not just struggling in terms of, look, I'm very confident as far as the economic aspect of this is concerned, India will tide over. But India is struggling in how to react. We've generally been firm, but very polite in our diplomacies. We've had differences with large number of countries, but we've always had a very positive view towards that. I think India is finding it very difficult how not to react to these continuous personal barbs and occasionally to the country. But I think hopefully, and again, possibly like you, or possibly because I wouldn't have survived otherwise 25 years in the WTO, I'm a perennial optimist, and I think hopefully we should be able to find some solution and way forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your insightful remarks. So I just have two follow-up questions on this. So given that India and China are long-term geopolitical competitors, I won't say rivals, so So, I mean, this whole tilt towards China or let's say Russia, I mean, will it lead to a very smooth emergence of a trade and economic partnership, or it'll create its own complications?
Again, very insightful of you, Abhinav, and something which I think is not just me, but lots of people have been pondering about. Look, if you look back at geopolitical relations, of the starting from the last century, they were very long-term strategic relationships. Look at India-Russia relationship. You carried on a relationship. It went through storms and less storms and calm weather, and the relationship persisted. I have this feeling, and it's not something I can say I like or dislike, that global relations today are becoming increasingly transactional. So you will have a very transactional relationship. So certainly you are absolutely right. The US actions are pushing us closer in terms of relationship to China. Something which, if you and I had been sitting here 2 years back, we would have probably laughed at the possibility of this happening. But it's happening. Now China too is absolutely aware why we are, why is this relationship getting better? And they know this. They will also extract whatever they feel are concessions. We will also hope to make some of the issues that we feel important come out. So both sides would be well aware that this is a transactional relationship. It may, but it may not have that long-term strategic relationships that used to exist between countries in the past. And both countries will, as things stand on any given day, try to maximize this as a win-win situation. But if circumstances change, then both of them will obviously revert back to the non-transactional period.
Thank you. Thank you very much for highlighting this new norm, or rather I should say the dominant norm of international relations, and that's transactionalism. So given that, I also want to just bring your attention to the impact of Trump's tariff policies beyond India. I mean, it's something which is not just impacting India, but it's impacting Brazil, it's impacting countries in Europe. So do you think that, the fallout of this will ultimately lead to the multipolarization of the global geo-economic order? As we can see that particularly the countries from the global south, they've already made complaints that the global financial institutions are heavily dominated by the West. So this whole turmoil and churning which is happening at the current stage, will it lead to some kind of multipolarization, or let's say, I would say, the reduction in the influence of the West in the global geo-economic order?
You probably will have to see it as in a sequential series of unfolding steps. And again, taking you back a few decades, what started as a largely bipolar world then became multipolar when you had the emerging economies, when you had developing countries asking for a greater voice in the Bretton Woods institutions. But that is also a period when you saw a kind of inherent resistance from the big players to this change from bipolar to multipolar. They didn't like it. They'd been running the world, they'd been setting the agenda. And then suddenly to find a group of countries with an increasing voice saying that, look, better a no deal rather than a bad deal. And this was unheard of in the multilateral forum. In that context, the next step is exactly what you've said. A greater degree of plurilateralism. I'm not calling it multipolarity, because this would be a minor change from the existing multipolarity, which actually wanted to encompass all the countries, into a regional or an interest-based plurality. So you will have different kinds of chords coming up. You will have a more stronger, perhaps, and a bigger BRICS coming up. You will suddenly find that, because the West would also want to exert or push the boundaries, you may find that the G7's agenda starts expanding. So you will have a large number of plurilateral groupings and initiatives, which certainly are going to push things in different directions, not necessarily all convergence. And to that extent, I feel we are at the moment seeing the beginning of a period of flux. There will certainly be, now what comes out of the churn, we'll have to see. India has a long mythological knowledge of churns and what comes out of it. Sometimes very good things, sometimes a few less good things also. But definitely, the geopolitics, multipolarity is in a period of churn.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, sir, I'll just bring your attention a bit towards the local domestic issues. I saw that you served in the IS, and given that you come from that generation of IS where we had scholar bureaucrats and scholar diplomats, which actually shaped the foundation of India in those early days, and also with your experience of coordinating between different ministries, I have a very, I would say, particular question regarding something which Prime Minister said. Prime Minister has explicitly focused on the idea of Viksit Bharat by 2047. We all want it, definitely. It's India's time. We are in a very sweet spot. But at the same time, he has said that by 2070, we want to be a net zero carbon emissions country. So, as a layperson, as an outsider, because my domain is not development, my domain is mostly geopolitics and security. But as an external analyst, I kind of find these two goals mutually contradictory. Because any massive or rapid economic growth requires a massive use of fossil fuels. And not, I would say, you cannot have all your energy coming from non-fossil fuel sources or unconventional sources. How do you look at this dichotomy?
Just listening to your question, Abhinav, makes me, and you're a modest person, that your knowledge even in this sphere is highly in depth. So no, really. Look, let's divide it up, and especially because you say let's look at it from the point of view of in layman terms, more general terms. India's average consumption of power at the moment is around 12 to 1400 kilowatt per capita. Now let us look at what is the average consumption of some of the developed countries. And let's not look at the United States because, I mean, they are something like 12,000 or 13,000 kilowatt hours per capita. But even if you looked at a very, very lower end average of the developed world, you would find that their per capita usage of power is about 4 to 6 times that of India's. Now, if India wants to become a developed country, there's going to be a big focus on manufacturing, there's going to be a big focus on the overall standard of living, and all of this requires power. So, even at a very modest level, India's power requirement, energy requirement, would need to at least quadruple by the time we get to 2047. Or in fact, I would even love to say, in order to get to our goal of developed nation, we will probably need to quadruple. That means from approximately 500 GW of power, we are looking at something in excess of 2000 to 2500 GW. Now, as you again have rightly said, can all of this come from renewable or clean or green energy? It cannot. It simply cannot, because as it is for one, renewable energy of the kind that we know, which is solar and wind primarily, always requires a balancing power. Unless your battery storage things improve so drastically and make them so efficient, you will always need this renewable energy to be balanced by more stable, non-renewable energy. Therefore, coal, and India has a huge supply of coal, will continue to be important. Now, my only take on this is that India, while it is fully committed, and this has been said again and again by the top leadership of India, India is fully committed to its zero net emission goals of 2070. India is perhaps determined. That was a commitment for 2070, but for 2047, I think India is determined that this is a responsibility towards the developmental aspirations of the present generation, and that yes, We want to take this country exactly 100 years after we achieved independence to a developed country status. So what has to be done? What has to be done is that we have to continuously bring down the percentage of non-fossil fuel in the overall India energy mix, not at all doing away with it, because there are large number of families and populations which are dependent on this, and completely doing away with thermal power plants or completely doing away with the usage of coal will be unjust towards what is our goal of just transition. But can we achieve both? Certainly. It will require lots of greening in other areas, lots of cleaning of our other energy sources. But Abhinav, certainly India can write this dichotomy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your very insightful and absolutely enlightening remarks. Definitely, it has been a pleasure interviewing on this subject, and also a very delightful and a great learning experience for me. So with this, we come to the end of our today's Usanas Dialogues. Thank you very much for watching us. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Thank you.
Thank you.